When the Toronto Raptors first joined the NBA in 1995, they needed a place to play. They decided to use the Sky Dome, which is where the Toronto Blue Jays played and was primarily designed for baseball and was also used for football as well. The stadium opened in 1989, so it was pretty new at the time. Inside, there is a retractable roof, and the capacity for a baseball game was just over 49,000. For basketball, you don't need nearly as much space, so the way a basketball court looked inside was pretty strange. Overall, it looked very temporary with the seating that was brought in and all of the open space around. They did have a scoreboard that would hang over the basketball court, but if you sat in the upper deck, it would be much higher than a typical basketball arena. It must have been a very strange view of the game. This was a good plan by the Raptors though. As a new team in the NBA, they struggled the first few seasons, and playing in such a big stadium that was already built for other teams, they were able to sell a larger amount of tickets for cheap. The tickets to the upper deck would sell for about $5. The Raptors ended up playing there for 4 seasons from 1995 to 1998. In '99, they got their own stadium just for them and have been there ever since. Pyramid Arena was the home of the Memphis Grizzlies from 2001 to 2004. The arena originally opened in 1991 and was used by the University of Memphis men's basketball. Later on in 1995 to 1996, it was used for arena football as well. Then, when the Grizzlies moved from Vancouver to Memphis, they played there. The strangest thing about the stadium is how it looks just like a pyramid from the outside. From the inside, most of it looks like a standard NBA arena, but when you look up, you see the very high ceiling. The Grizzlies only played there until 2004, then they got a new stadium, and the University of Memphis moved out at the same time. The stadium was vacant for a while, until it was eventually turned into a Bass Pro Shops. The next stadium is one of the older ones on the list. The Chicago International Amphitheater was first opened in 1934. The main purpose when the stadium opened was to hold livestock expositions. For basketball, the first team to call it home was the Chicago American Gears of the National Basketball League. They played there from 1944 to 1948. In 1961, the NBA team, the Chicago Packers, played there, but only until 1962, and the Chicago Bulls played there from 1966 to 1967. A number of other sports teams played there as well, and the most recent was the Loyola men's basketball team from 1987 to 1989. Here are some pictures of the stadium. The fact that it was not originally made for basketball and how old it is made it one of the more strange stadiums to be used. After basketball, there would occasionally be concerts there. The amphitheater ended up closing in 1999 and was demolished. The Alamo Dome is a stadium in San Antonio, Texas, and is currently used by the University of Texas San Antonio football team. It's an indoor stadium and opened in 1993. The outside of the stadium itself is unique, and inside, it's been used for the NBA, NFL, and the MLB at some point. The Texas Rangers played a few exhibition games there. For the NBA, the San Antonio Spurs played there from 1993 until 2002. The stadium is much bigger than most NBA arenas, so they would drop curtains down over some of the seating for most games. The Alamo Dome was built to be able to transform from basketball to other sports, but it was still odd to be playing basketball in such a large space. Most times an NBA team played in a stadium built for other sports. It was a temporary thing, but the Spurs played there for a whole 10 seasons. Eventually, they got their own arena in 2003, and the Alamo Dome has stayed around and had other sports ever since. The Boston Celtics played basketball at the Boston Garden from 1946 all the way until 1995. The arena was built in 1928, and the Boston Bruins hockey team played there from 28 to 95. Inside the stadium was very interesting looking. The floors were different than most NBA arenas' floors. Another strange thing about the stadium is that it did not have any air conditioning inside. During some hockey games, this would cause fog in the arena because of the ice melting. It would also make some of the basketball games get extremely hot, and they would have to provide oxygen to the players. The way the seating was set up was also very interesting, and the stadium was used for concerts and other events over the years as well. Overall, there were many popular sporting events there, and the arena was very historic. The Detroit Pistons played home games at the Pontiac Silverdome from 1978 to 1988. The Silverdome was mainly used for the Detroit Lions of the NFL. It was a domed stadium with artificial turf, and when the Pistons played there, they had to make some changes. Unfortunately, it looked rather temporary and odd when they did this. If you were sitting in some parts of the stands, it might seem fairly normal, But it didn't take long to realize that it was weird. The stadium opened in 1975 and wasn't used much by sports after 2001 when the Lions moved out. Another strange arena that the Detroit Pistons played at was Kobo Center. They played there before the Silverdome from 1961 to 1978. From the outside, the stadium has a unique round shape. On the inside, the seating is shaped in sort of a U. There seems to be less seats than usual in the upper deck areas of the stadium as well. The setup looks like it would be great for concerts or other performances, but for basketball, it's just a little strange for one end to have a wall or a little bit of open space instead of seating. The facility is still open and is used for different purposes today, but it hasn't been home to the Pistons since 1978. The Indiana State Fairgrounds Coliseum was the home of the Indiana Pacers from 1967 to 1974. The arena first opened in 1936 and was popular for hockey. When the Pacers used it for basketball, this is what it looked like. Some things that made this arena interesting are the windows behind the seating areas. Occasionally, there was a large open space around the basketball court as well. The capacity was also just 6,800 for basketball games. Even though the Indiana Pacers moved out in 1975, the stadium is still around and used today. It was renovated and is mainly used for college basketball and roller derby. The Seattle Supersonics were an NBA team from 1967 to 2008. Then they moved to Oklahoma City and became the Thunder. When they were in Seattle from 1994 to 1995, they played at the Tacoma Dome. The Tacoma Dome is a domed stadium that opened in 1983, and it's been home to multiple sports teams over the years. When you look at the stadium from the outside or the inside, you can see that it's very interesting. It's actually built of wood, and when it opened, it was the largest wooden dome in the world. It later got passed, though, by the Superior Dome in Michigan, which is larger. Today, the Tacoma Dome is still open and mainly used for different types of events and not sports as much. The Atlanta Hawks have had a lot of changes over the years. They were first called the Buffalo Bisons in 1946. Then they became the Tri-City Blackhawks until 1951. From 51 to 55, they moved to Milwaukee and were the Milwaukee Hawks. Then they were the St. Louis Hawks from 1955 to 1968, and then finally moved to Atlanta in 68 and have been there ever since. During their time in St. Louis, from 55 to 68, they played at Kiel Auditorium. The arena opened in 1934 as a theater. From the outside, it looks more like a museum than a basketball arena. Inside, similar to Kobo Center, you can tell that it was made for stage performances. The lighting is also very interesting and looks sort of fancy. The capacity was 9,300, and the Hawks played there until 1968 when they moved to Atlanta. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.